I get a ton of comments about Anton LaVey, so let's talk about him. So, who was Anton LaVey? Anton LaVey was a famous storyteller, to put it lightly, and if we're being 100% truthful, pathological liar who was the high priest and founder of the controversial and iconic Church of Satan. He was known as many things, but I think a lot of people can agree piece of shit accurately describes him by today's standards. He really didn't care who called him a liar and a charlatan and a grifter, because he admits to it and he kind of seems proud of it, as per a quote from his book, Satan Speaks. The quote goes, "I'm one hell of a liar. Most of my adult life, I've been accused of being a charlatan, a phony, and an imposter. I guess that makes me about as close as what the devil's supposed to be as anyone. It's true, I lie constantly, incessantly. Because I lie so often, I'd really be full of shit if I didn't keep my mouth closed and my bowels open." That can be found on page 101 of Satan Speaks. So, a little background on LaVey. He had a typical upbringing, although most of his past is unknown. His parents allowed him to explore his love for musical instruments, of which he played many. He played the oboe, um, the keyboard, the piano, and the calliope. Oh, and he also played the accordion. He claimed to have joined the circus after dropping out of high school at age 16 to be a cage boy and a musician. That is supposedly where the realization that the same men who attended the Sunday morning revivals could often be found at the skimpy shows on Saturday night. It's important to note that there was a journalist that looked into his life named Lawrence Wright, and Lawrence Wright could find no evidence that he was ever a carny or joined the circus or had anything to do with that lifestyle. It appears to just be one of his many different versions of his journey to Satanism. He claimed many things over the years that there was no evidence for, and were often contested by everybody else involved. Like, he had an affair with Marilyn Monroe, and he worked as a psychic investigator for a police department, both of which cannot be verified. He married his first wife when she was 15 and he was 21, and they had their first child just a year later. Now, we have to think back then, things like that weren't super uncommon. So, let's not knock him in that regard. It's weird today, but like back then, it really wasn't that weird. To avoid the Korean draft, he studied criminology, and then later became a police photographer. That cannot be verified, and that's also where the claim of a psychic investigator came from as well. And then his second daughter was born in 1963. Her name is Xena. She would later become the first spokesperson for the Church of Satan and defend the church in the 1980s. She later resigned from her position as spokesperson of the Church of Satan in 1990, severed all ties with her father, and renounced LaVeyan Satanism. And on top of that, she published a 9-page fact sheet about all of her father's lies over the years. If you're interested in looking at that fact sheet, I have linked it in my link tree in my bio. But basically, this is just a huge list of claims versus reality, and her endorsing what Lawrence Wright had found when he looked into LaVey's life. Xena later went on to actually teach Tibetan Buddhism, so that's a big jump. I didn't look into it, but I would be interested in knowing more about her childhood and her relationship with her father. In the late 1960s, LaVey had become quite the local celebrity in San Francisco, because he drove around in a Corners van and he walked around with his pet leopard. So that's crazy. I can see why that happened. What was originally known as the Order of the Trapezoid would later become the Church of Satan, with views surrounding indulgence and opposition to Christianity. He presented his views as sort of an ethical version of egoism. The aesthetic revolution was not about worshiping the devil or practicing evil. It was rather to give way to pleasures as long as you're not hurting others. Being the showman he was, he began to give Friday night lectures on the occult and rituals. He even described occultism as a do-it-yourself God kit. So on April 30th of 1966, shortly after his 36th birthday, he ritualistically shaved his head in the tradition of ancient executioners and proclaimed that day to be the year one, or Anno Satanis, the first year of the age of Satan. The LA Times and the San Francisco Chronicle dubbed him the Black Pope, probably because he went hard like performing a satanic baptism on his 3-year-old daughter Xena and dedicating her to Satan and the left-hand path hard. Like, honestly, no wonder she estranged her father. It's been reported that his interest in the Church of Satan was strictly monetary, and he heavily focused on interviews, writing books, and photography. He actually wrote a number of books, like the Satanic Bible, the Satanic Rituals, the Satanic Witch, Letters from the Devil, The Devil's Notebook, and Satan Speaks, all of which are linked in my Amazon storefront and the link tree in my bio if you are interested in those. And to go back to the comment from the beginning, it is also a famous misconception that his last words were, oh no, what have I done? This is a false narrative, most likely started by the Christians to push an agenda. Like anyone's shocked that they would do that. His official cause of death was a pulmonary edema, which is excessive fluid accumulation in the lungs. So not only would it make it really hard for him to breathe, he probably wasn't saying much either. So in conclusion, I would probably agree with the claim that Anton LaVey was a piece of shit charlatan, but I think he was absolutely a necessary component in modern day Satanism. He definitely laid the groundwork, and without him, I don't think the Satanic Temple would exist. And I don't think anybody can contest that the Satanic Temple definitely does really great things for people in the categories of religious pluralism and standing up to the face of tyranny. So yeah, if you are still here, thank you for watching. And make sure you interact with the video to let TikTok know that you like this kind of stuff. But anyway, I was glad to have you for these 6.5 minutes. And no more, believe less. Hell Satan.